Gloria in Excelsis Deo, welcome to the Stream of Truth.
Hello, and welcome to the Stream of Truth. Gloria in Excelsis Deo. I am Dr. Tassel Faith Shamebrook.
And I'm Sean Kelly.
And today we are talking about something very exciting, emerging into a bliss state.
Yeah, and I guess I'll just say we have a visitor beeping at us in this stream. Tassel's dishwasher is gonna be periodically saying hello and adding its input to the bliss state. For whatever reason, it just keeps beeping. We don't know what it is, so.
So I wanted to talk about this today because I have somewhat recently just been entering into some bliss states, and it's a new experience for me. I'm really grateful for the experience, and I hope to be in these bliss states more and more often. And I know, Sean, you have also had this experience, and so I just thought it would be interesting to talk about sort of how we feel we've arrived there, and just anything else about it. And I mean, what really could be better than being in a bliss state? It seems like that's probably the ultimate goal, is to be in bliss.
Yeah. Yeah, I have some thoughts about it. That might sound a bit weird. But I guess so. One way to talk about it is, I'm not familiar with sort of the Eastern philosophies, but the bliss states for me arise out of spontaneity, sort of. They spontaneously arise and then fall away. And I believe that part of what they can be used to teach us is a sort of non-attachment to what our current state is, as well as well. So almost like we get into these bliss states and then we're like, oh, I've made it. This is what it feels like to be sort of in an enlightened state. Just peace, contentness, joy, and bliss. And that is the state. That is the enlightened state, more or less. But then usually something happens. And we will fall out of it. It's, I think, meant to show us, it's sort of, we've talked about having carrots on a stick before. It's meant to show us what the state can be if we are in congruence or in alignment with reality instead of fighting it. So essentially, once we start to fight it, fight reality in any way, we'll fall out of the bliss. And the magic will end, sort of. Sometimes really abruptly. Sometimes like it'll someone will say something or something will happen and we'll just be like, oh, I was in the bliss state and now that this has happened, now I don't feel that anymore. And I think that the bliss state is representative of the efforts of what some would call Shakti the prana, and how that gets manipulated, or not manipulated, but utilized by the divine feminine principle within us to purify, to cleanse. And so these states are, I believe, products of the cleansing. So as we like purify our vessel more, our energetic body, and release distortion, we begin to experience these states. But then because we have distortion still in our attractor fields, like we still hold some type of distortion about reality, we'll usually get pulled out of it, and then we feel guilty, or we might feel ashamed for that too. which makes it sort of worse. Like we feel like we did something wrong, or oh my gosh, you know, I didn't want to be unsettled by this thing, but I am. So, you know, like we get upset about that too. So I think they're really, really juicy states. And the Shakti, or the experience of the purification, can manifest in many, many, many different ways. Um, and we can go more into those. But I was wondering if you wanted to share sort of your experience with the bliss state, maybe if you wanted to give some details on it, or what you realized about it, or
Yeah. Yeah, it's so like mysterious and exciting to me. I think probably throughout my life, I have had little, very small experiences of it. Now that I've had longer experiences of it, I can see, kind of looking back, oh, I think I did have very short experiences of it in the past. So I think, at least for me, what brought me back into these bliss states more frequently recently and for longer periods of time is, first of all, for me, I set an intention about it, basically. Um, I didn't use the words bliss state, but I set an intention just to feel whole, peaceful, joyful within myself without needing anything from the external. And you and our relationship was the carrot for that, because it has been a challenge for me because of the sometimes long distance aspect of our relationship. I could feel sad and miss you, etc. And I just really wanted to transcend that feeling. I didn't want to feel that way. So I largely set the intention in part to try to transcend that feeling. So for me, I set an intention. And then I think another part that really was instrumental for me was really unconditionally loving, accepting myself. I'm not sure exactly why that would help this, but it seems to have helped it, because it's been happening since I've been doing that. So just trying to be a detective about, like, how did I get here? So I would say over the past maybe 6 weeks to 2 months, I've really, 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 really been in a practice of really unconditionally loving and accepting myself. Like, no matter what is coming up, I'll just talk to myself and say, it's okay. I love you. I honor you. I'm here for you. So I've been really present with myself. I've been really there for myself. And this leads into the third thing that I think has helped me to enter these, or come back to these bliss states, is a presence with myself. This very much deeper inward of my energy, and like, what is going on for me and what do I need, and like a moment to moment presence with myself, not thinking so much about the future, not thinking so much about the past, but just right there with myself and my guidance. And then I also want to share that I really believe the phrase Gloria in excelsis Deo is also a pathway for me to get into a bliss state.
yep,
The way that I understand the meaning, it's basically glory to God, and the way I take it is all things come from God, and everything I'm experiencing is a gift from God, and it is to God that I give my thanks. It is not to myself, basically. So those 4 aspects, the intention I set, really loving myself, really being super present with myself, and actually using this phrase, feel to me that's, and then of course, decades of inner work. not to not to not mention all that. I think all the inner work helped too. Just releasing so much gunk that was kind of holding me down. So I'll just share about these particular bliss states. The first long one happened about 2 weeks ago, and I was in it for about 2 days. And I just felt like I was resting in the palm of God's hand. That's what it felt like. And I saw that image and that phrase, and I wasn't doing anything spiritual. I wasn't meditating or, oh, I'm going to be silent for 2 days. None of that. I was cleaning my house. I was doing errands. I was doing yard work. I was doing very mundane, human-y things. But I just felt so blissed out. And I just felt all I need to do is just keep following the nudges that God is giving me. And all these amazing things happened, all these gifts came in. But most importantly, I just felt so at peace, and I felt without fear. And I wasn't really thinking about anything but sort of the present moment. And this is all very unusual for me. I have an extremely strong ego and thinking mind that always wants to think about the future and has fear and all that. So anyway, it was a really amazing experience. And what popped me out of it was when my kids came home to me on a Sunday afternoon after being with their dad. And then also you and I had some interactions, and all of that just popped me right out of it. And I think it's because I still get triggered by things around my kids or around you. And the triggering brought me out of the bliss. And this happened yesterday too. Yesterday, I was in, I think, a bliss state for most of the day. And then something came up with you that also popped me out. So although I was with my kids all day and some other friends, and I was able to remain in the bliss state. So that felt like a little bit of progress in a way. Anyway, so yeah, that's my experience.
Someone asked, Thomas asked, are we talking about shrooms?
No.
No. I mean, that is a way to move into that state. It can be a way.
Yeah, I didn't use,
but no,
I'm like a clean teen. I'm not against any of that, but I don't really
participate.
do that so much. But yeah, no, this was just a consciousness thing.
Yeah, so we can use psychoactive chemicals, of course, to, move into different states and achieve different altered sort of states of consciousness. But it's really important to remember the only reason that these states exist is because you are those states. You can move into these realms without the aid of any of this stuff. That's nothing against plant medicine or any behaviors in sort of what people tend to call, what do they call it? Psychonaut, I think is what they call it. Psychonaut or something like that, where essentially they're exploring consciousness using psychedelics. So there's nothing against that, but no, we're not really talking about that. Although we should talk about that at some point more deeply.
One of the things I also just really want to say, and this is probably going to sound obvious, but it was something I didn't totally, I guess, experientially realize, that bliss is in the present moment. Like the only way to feel bliss is to be present. I think I always thought bliss is somewhere in the future. Bliss exists somewhere after this happens, and after this happens, and after this happens, then I will feel bliss. When my life is perfect, quote unquote, to the human, then I'll feel bliss. And yeah. I didn't realize I was missing bliss all along because I wasn't present, and I wasn't aligned, and I wasn't accepting everything in my life, including myself. Yep. So to me, that's like the biggest learning. Oh my gosh, bliss is in the present moment. That's the only way, that's the only location you'll find it.
Yep. Yeah. So maybe I'll just talk a little bit about bliss, and like you mentioned acceptance and stuff. I'll just talk a little bit about that. Um, so like this bliss joy state, that doesn't have any particular reason, that is just the moment feels blissful and joyous, right? That's sort of the state we're talking about. We're not like, oh, something good happened, so yay. Like that's a thing, and that happens, and that's cool. But what we're talking about is a more pervading state of bliss that
it's outside
outside
really,
of the reality, really.
external circumstances. It's
Yeah.
completely just an internal experience.
That is our, so that it's really interesting to say this, and this might sound crazy to some people, but that's actually our natural state. That's our default state. That's what our default orientation is, as far as how we were sort of meant to be when we're fully aligned. Like that's basically all we'll experience. So what ends up happening, and just from my experience, for example, so someone might wonder, well, how can you maintain that state if you're like, look, if you see the news and you see there's a war going on? It's seen more as an absurd comedy than anything else. The absurdity of the ego is just, it becomes more just kind of humorous. It has a sad, dramatic bit to it, but it's not seen much different than a movie or a story of any kind. Once it's accepted that there are humans that are killing and fighting each other, and that's what they're choosing to do, it becomes a sort of like, you can see that it's insane, but it doesn't affect your peace, because you can only really be responsible for your own peace, right? And so, there are people certainly that would say that view is heartless or something. But it's actually it would be that view that is what frees one from sort of the bondage to their suffering, which will pull them out of bliss. It's essentially the judgment of the world in that moment that goes, oh, this is disgusting. Because on one level, on the sort of the 3D level, or the physical reality and egoic level of purview of the reality, it is gross behavior, right? But when you let go of the judgment of it, then you can see that humanity must play out its karma. It must do what it is here to do and learn what it's here to learn. And I don't know what all that is. And so the reason I used war for an example is because, like, we're trying to achieve that type of state with all stimuli, not just war, but also when our partner says something, and we didn't get in an argument or anything last night or do anything. There was no conflict. I think I just said something that kind of was like, oh, that doesn't feel great. But the self-acceptance is more truly the only thing that leads to these states. Like, and if you can consider it this way, self-acceptance, you are everything that is. So everything that you're accepting and surrendering to, it being what it is now, is self-acceptance. It's when another is doing something weird and you accept them as they are. It doesn't mean you condone their behavior. You just accept that that's what they're doing. That's what they're doing. It's okay that this is happening now. I'm at peace regardless of what's going on. That's when that bliss state starts to be maintained. And from that state, you have a very clear, truthful, more realistic actual view of what's happening in reality. And so essentially we're always looking to self-accept, to recognize that the self that we're accepting there's two aspects to that too. There we have the lowercase self. This is our egoic self, And then we have our true self, which is divinity. We have to accept the flaw we see in our egoic self and love our being, right? But then we also have to accept that that's not really what we are. That's not really what we are. So we have to also accept our true self. And so there's stages of acceptance. There's first acceptance of like from the egoic place where we're essentially sort of taming the ego to not freak out when something is not quite how the ego thinks it should be. And then beyond that, we are self-accepting divinity to be what we are. So we're embodying our divine self. And in that state, the ego is not really making any noise anyways. And stuff starts to be very different. So it's sort of differing levels of self-acceptance is the way that I would see it. And so we can notice basically the things that take us out of the bliss. These are the things that that kind of like there's lessons there. There's something there in our field. Like there's some aspect of myself that was triggered or hurt before or something like that. And now, because I'm manifesting all of these experiences, one of those experiences happened to trigger that wound to be seen, right? And then the emotions come up from that wound. We're wanting to question, I think, who am I accepting? Like what self am I accepting? And paying attention to just is this my ego that I'm accepting? And or am I because who accepts, right? The only one who accepts is sort of the ego. Divinity doesn't know how not to accept. So there's no accepting principle really needed. The reality is, and that's it, and it's as it is. So that's sort of where we can move into a more perpetual bliss state when we are seeing through the eyes of divinity, which would be in a non-linear way, which is sort of, that's where it is when we start to transcend duality. But prior to that, if we're looking to have peace, like just in our day-to-day, and kind of we kind of feel like, oh, it'd be nice to just be blissed out while I go about my life, right? Like that seems ideal. Even the attachment to that state itself can be a challenge. So we're invited to, if we want to maintain that state, we actually have to sort of let go of all attachment to everything. Otherwise, our attachments will inform the state leaving. Like, something will behave in a way that is outside of our expectations and outside of what our attachment says is right, and then we'll get upset and we'll fall right out of it really quickly. So as we purify more and more, release attachments and release wounding, like sort of like heal our wounding, which is really just balancing our perspective on what even occurred. We don't have to necessarily heal anything because nothing was wrong in the first place. That's really what we're trying to get to notice, is that the reality was as it was and it was perfect. And that's sort of why forgiveness is what sort of heals everything. Forgiveness is just acceptance of what occurred. This is what occurred, and it served, and then being grateful for it because it served my learning. And so if we can go back, like, so if something happens to pull us out of a bliss state, so if we're holding it for a couple days or whatever, and something happens to pull it out, we can use that. That's really, really good breadcrumbs for us to notice where we had experience in the past that pulled us, that hurt us, and then to actually visit that and to take our more divine purview and look at that scenario again, which will uplift it and heal it. It will transmute this shitty scenario into a perfect scenario. And once that's done, then the mechanisms that the ego uses to say, hey, this is bad, this is not right, you have to be upset about this right now, like those fall away because there's no structure for it to build up from. So really it just takes our awareness of what's going on. But yeah, it's all basically self-acceptance, and from what I would say, I think that literally, I would say literally, this density of consciousness is literally like, do you accept divinity or not? That's that's literally like what we do, I think, here primarily. And if we don't, we can continue to evolve without accepting it, but we go down what they call the left-hand path, or the negative path, or service to self. This is when we don't accept, and we go the other way. So acceptance is the way to peace, self-acceptance. And when you're accepting another, you're really just accepting yourself anyway. When you're accepting, your car, you go out to your car to go to work in the morning and all the tires are flat. That's what it is. That's what's going on. You're going to have an interesting morning, right? Like, isn't that exciting to have this interesting morning? This is wacky, right? Like, you can smile at the joy of, what is this? What is this adventure? Now I don't know how I'm getting to work. I don't know what's going on. I have to do all these things. None of it's a problem. It's a car. Who cares? What, your boss going to fire you because your tires are all flat, right? There's nothing going on really. So we can respect our feelings, but we don't have to get drawn in as much as we do.
Yeah, I think I would add in to my list of 4 things. So I said intention, unconditionally loving, accepting myself, presence, staying with myself, and using this phrase, Gloria in excelsis Deo. I would say, partly from what you just brought up, that like a 5th component is just faith in the entire process of life. Just faith and surrender and acceptance of everything that is happening. Just another way to say it in the more vernacular is just giving it to God. Like, I'm just trusting that God has my back. Of course, we are our God. God is us. So it gets confusing to talk about. But I love the phrase, I trust life. That phrase has helped me so much. Sometimes I just repeat that to myself all day long. If my human's like really struggling in trusting life, I'll just keep saying that to myself. I trust life. I trust life. I trust that all is happening for my highest and best and for everyone else's highest and best.
Yes. Garganzul said a really nice quote. He said, faith is the end of the pain of ignorance. I really like that.
Yeah, of the ignorance of the human, right?
Yeah.
That the human my human can just freak out a lot. Like, oh, this isn't right, or oh, I don't like this, or oh, this is painful, or oh, I had a different idea about how this was going to play out.
I would say, like, the human, or the all the things that you listed, like faith and all of that, really the underpinning concept that holds all of that together is humility, right? Like, through humility, we can simply say, I don't know, right? I'm ignorant. I'm ignorant in this small self. I am ignorant. I'm merely here observing what's occurring, and I am ignorant of the reality. I don't know what's going on. I may think I have ideas of what should be, what shouldn't be, and things like that. I have ideas of these things. These are just opinions or positionalities or thoughts. They're meaningless, really. But the ego will pull us into those really powerfully. But humility allows us to go, no, I have no idea what's going on. And then I trust the universe that has consistently shown me that when I trust the universe, when I trust God, when I have faith, that I do truly learn from these crappy things. I learn a lot. Had they not happened, I would not be who I am. It all is clearly orchestrated for my highest and best learning. And so if I can just be a humble student, um, then there's no problem. Some lessons are really fun and breezy, and other lessons are a little challenging or disturbing, maybe. But they're all the same. It's all the same thing. And so, yeah, I would say humility with the faith. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to that. I've been saying this a lot about our relationship. I've been saying I'm a humble student of our relationship and its teachings and its invitations for my expansion. And I texted you this morning. I said, I don't know what I'm doing. What I mean is, my human self does not know what she's doing. She must humble herself to the guidance and how she's being directed through what's coming into her experience. And I wanted to share that after my first 2-day bliss state a couple of weeks ago, I felt really guided, or I just wanted to have a little ceremony and thank spirit. And I just sat down in the way I do ceremony, and basically I spoke it out loud. Basically what I said to spirit was, I may start to cry as I say this. What I said to spirit was, I can see that you have always led me on my aligned path. And it's always been my human self that was mistaken, maybe from fear or just her own confused agendas. And I said to spirit, I said, I can see how you have always shown me the way, that always the nudges I could feel, even though my human was scared, were always correct. Were always leading me to a better place and a bigger expansion of myself and really greater joy and peace in my life. And I said, thank you so much for leading me this whole way through my 53 years of incarnation in this vessel, for me to experience a bliss state in the past 2 days. Like, I could see how every, in a way, human catastrophe that I thought I had been given had actually led me closer to myself and closer to spirit and closer to the bliss state. It was all these very difficult, somewhat traumatic to the human things throughout my life that led me here.
Yeah.
And I felt so much gratitude. And what I said to spirit was, I said, I see you. I said, I see you. And I see that everything good in my life has come from you and your direction towards me. And then I had this really cool experience where the word rapture came, like, just zooming into my third eye. And I like heard that word before, but I didn't really know what it meant. And I looked it up later, and rapture can mean like when you meet God, when you meet the Lord. And it feels like that's what happened. Like, cause I was grateful, and I was seeing, and I was Gloria in excelsis Deoing. I was like, I see it has all come from you. And then I think I had some kind of experience with spirit, this rapturous experience. And then right after that, spirit was kind of speaking through me, and I was kind of channeling some stuff. And if it's okay, this is what I just wanted to share what came through right after that. Spirit said to me, I am outside of fear. Keep meeting me here. I will take you to places you have never even dreamed of. I already have, haven't I? Places inside of yourself, places you think you went to because of other people, because of being in relationship with others, but they have all been places inside of yourself. You did not realize all this treasure was within you, dear one. You thought you were receiving the spoils of life. I did. Yet you were receiving the penultimate treasures. There is nothing outside of you. stay with me here. And I think what I take it to mean, the penultimate treasures, penultimate meaning second to last, is that the ultimate treasure is the complete reunion with spirit, outside of this lifetime, or maybe in this lifetime too, if you're able to just completely merge. Yeah. So, and I keep hearing that. I keep hearing spirit say, there's nothing outside of you. Stay with me here. Stay with me here. There's nothing outside of you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. That was a beautiful little channeling. I liked that a lot. Thank you for sharing that. E said that there was a quote from Quo, my brothers and sisters of Quo. But he paraphrased it to peace is not warlessness. I'd be curious if you could share if you have the actual channeling, if you could share that with us, that would be great. I'd like to have a look at it. I'd like to understand what they were saying. I would just say peace is almost exactly what Tassel was saying. Peace is just outside of fear. So war would mean conflict of some kind. So peace is just it's not acting from conflict. It's acting in expansion of just, heart-based expansion. It's not against anything. It's for life, in other words. It's for life, for love. It's not against things. So truth doesn't have to defend itself. I've said it a couple of times. I don't know if I said it today, but truth doesn't have to defend itself. And this is why someone like Gandhi was so successful in liberating people through peace. But yeah, it doesn't mean you don't take action. It's just that your action is inspired from love and expansion instead of struggle and fear and strife. It's like the weird idea of fighting for peace. Like that doesn't make any sense, right? And there's this show. It's kind of funny. It's kind of a darker show, but there's a hero called Peacemaker, and he says, "I don't care how many men, women, or children have to die for me to find peace." And it's like satire, right? But he's demonstrating this concept that we don't find peace from fear. We don't find bliss in fear. We don't. We find stolen power. And so we're going to be invited. All of us will eventually have these experiences of the rapture that Tassel was talking about, and we'll be invited to realize that we're not what we thought we were. That we're not this identity we thought we were. And this process can be really troubling, can be really hard, because we've built up a lot of attachments to what we think we have been, like what we think we are. And then we also have people in our lives that will continue to talk to us as if we are what we were. And then we know ourselves as something different now. So there's a lot of challenge there and stuff like that. And that's all what challenges that bliss or peace state, that joy state. And so, like Tassel said, I think, or the channeling that Tassel did, the spirits outside of fear. So spirit doesn't actually, the way I understand it, from what they've told me, is they essentially don't experience it. So spirit, the purity of divinity doesn't experience fear at all. So any of that negative stuff, it literally doesn't hear it. Like, it doesn't register for them. So if we're calling out to spirit, please help me, I'm so in pain, I'm so much pain, they don't actually hear any of our pain. They just respond with love. And the one of the issues that we have is that we're at that moment, we can't really feel it because we're in the fear state, in the pain state. So often when we're at our lowest, we we are kind of calling out for help, and sometimes we actually do receive these sort of divine interventions. That's what happened to me. But generally speaking, we're wanting to like basically let go of the identity where it serves us to. And so you know the self that has done all the things and accomplished all the things and all that stuff is an illusion. And if we want to maintain a bliss state while still being in a persona, we have to realize that, like, we have to learn that that's the way reality is more truly, and we'll resist that to varying degrees, especially if it comes to like children and different things like that. Like we'll want the children are our children and things like that. We own them in a way, sort of, right? Or we claim like responsibility for them, and we're doing it from love. Like we're trying to help usually, right? But so there's nothing wrong with any of it. And so I guess what I wanted to talk about with all what I'm trying to say with all of that is just that the bliss states are very achievable, very normal. Like I have them all the time, pretty much. And I'll feel sort of rising energy up my spine. It usually starts at the bottom, goes up into my head, and then it will go a wave over me, and my hair will stand up and I'll get goosebumps. It's an ecstatic joy. And I have that so often, like it's not countable, really. It's constant. I do fall out of it, and that's why I know so much about falling out of it. Because it's falling out of it that allows you to learn, oh, what's going on here? What's happening? And it's every time that I fall out of it, it's always the same thing. It's the ego chimes in. It's got some juice or some emotional power behind it in something, and chimes in to tell me why I should feel bad now. Like it basically pulls me out of it. And so I can fall out of it, and I can fall out of it for days on end even. But generally, I am primarily in it most of the time. I have challenges still with interacting with people, because that's why I spend so much time not interacting with people, to be honest. Because people tend to just want to complain a lot. They tend to be somewhat unhappy, and I can find that draining to me. I can find that behavior to be challenging, and a lot of the time they're not even meaning to complain. I'm seeing it that way, because what I'm seeing is sort of they're meaning something that could be neutral, or even they could be meaning something positive to them. But I'm seeing criticism, not necessarily of me, but of anything. And it makes me go like, why are they criticizing stuff? Can't they just appreciate what's beautiful? Can't they just love stuff? Like, it starts to make me get a little judgy, right? And it's the part of me that thinks that I know best, that I know how people should be, that pulls me out of it. And so I'm trying to be very transparent and honest about what pulls me out of my bliss states. And it's people. It's not their fault, but that's, for me, what pulls me out. If I'm on my own in a hole somewhere, I'm fine. And that's what's hard about it, is because I want to have relationships with people and I want to be able to communicate with people, but I have trouble because people seem to not want to maintain their own peace. They don't seem interested in their own peace. They may claim they are and stuff, and so I end up getting really pulled into sort of what I just call drama, and I'm finding it's just not serving me to do that so much anymore. So the bliss states are sort of the carrot, because that carrot, it's self-evident that state is like, oh, this is how I'm supposed to be. Like, this is what life should feel like, primarily. Like when we're in it, would you agree, Tassel, that that's like, it just feels like that's how it should be, right? Um, and so I don't recommend desperately seeking the state, because that itself is an attachment and an issue. But instead, sort of subtly noticing and correcting perceptions that pull you away from peace and feeling just contentness, a contentness and a joy for just being. That's sort of the bliss state, and then we tend to try to put. You may hear the ego come in and say, "Oh, look what we've done! We've done it so well. We've accomplished it. Look at all the work that I did to make this happen." And it's interesting because it's actually the dissolution of that identity that is what allows or permits the bliss state to unfold more profoundly. So it's really interesting to me that there's this voice in us that says, "Look what I've done. This is a result of my work." And I have this voice as well that says this. And sometimes when that voice is chiming, that's sometimes then I'll come out of it, because I'll start to assess my own development and be like, "Oh, well, I'm not doing good enough," and then I'll fall out of it that way. So it's really amazing how the ego will claim anything, everything. The ego did not provide us our bliss, did not do anything. The ego did nothing at all. The doing and the causes and effect of being are not linear in that way. Like, so it ends up being a real challenge. So even being in the bliss state that often has its own challenge, its own sort of like consequences, you could say, right? Consequences to me doing that. I don't talk to people, right? I don't talk to them. I don't engage with them. I don't have an interest, really, for most of them. You know, and it's because I don't have yet enough presence and self-acceptance to be in really, really wacky situations with people, and lots of ignorance, lots of like confusion, and not feel like I should try to help them out of it, or like it's my own crap basically that causes that. So we go through this period of isolation where we tend to pull away from a lot of people. And this is why, because the state that we know is the real state starts to be hard to hold with others around, others that you care about. So it's easier to do it with strangers. But when you are attached to all these people that you care about and you're invested in somehow in the relationship, when stuff happens there, it pulls you out. And so it just becomes a balancing act a bit of like, you become very, very choosy with who you engage with on any sort of deeper level, because you don't need the stimuli that most people are offering you, which is often sort of misguided type of like, they tend to want something from you, and you know, that type of thing. They tend to be sourcing some type of something from you. Like they're friends with you because you are like this, you're kind, you're whatever, you're funny. They like you for some reason. The love is not usually unconditional. And from that state of presence, you can tell, like you can feel it. You can see that this relationship is a facade, like that this is not unconditional. So, and that can feel hurtful, right? Because you see it and they don't even have any idea what's going on, really. So it can be very, very challenging. But so I guess the main point is like you said, self-acceptance, I think, self-acceptance and self-love. And did you have any other anything else that you'd like to add? I just rambled for a while. I'll go forever if nobody stops me.
So I think I'm sort of just trying to figure out, I guess my thinking mind is trying to figure out, and of course the thinking mind, that's not the way to the bliss state, but I can see that I can be in bliss when I'm completely on my own and not interacting with anyone. I can see it, that's quite doable. And then I had an experience this weekend where I was able to hold it around my kids and some other friends. And I think I was able to hold it around all of them because I think I've mostly let go of most of my attachments around my kids and my friends. So I think the sticky point for me is our partnership. I guess I'm not quite sure like what it looks like. Do you let go of everything, just not attached? Or I don't know. I'm a humble student here. I'm not sure what that looks like.
I think. So oh, sorry. I thought you were done. Go on, continue.
I was going to say, I think that's my growth point. Is how are you in partnership, or we call it a divine union? How are you in a divine union with someone in this way? What does that, I don't know, this is new territory for me.
So yeah, can I share just some of my perspectives on it, because I think it might make a little bit of sense. So because the moment is the only thing that is real, you can't miss someone because they aren't real at that moment. They're not basically, if so, for example, because what happens is we get attached to a person and we feel good with them. We enjoy that. So a lot of times we're attaching ourselves also to some of the state that we feel, like the enjoyment and the different things. And so a non-attached partnership to me is sort of, and this is a cause for a lot of our this, right? Because I'm in this state of non-linear experience most of the time, and you're not. And so we have this clashing of worldviews in our particular partnership. We have differing worldviews right now, and this causes this clash because the I'm not attached to what is. So if in order for me to miss someone, that's me saying to the reality that the reality is wrong now because this person isn't here with me. So it's the same principle of, if the person isn't here with me, that must be the way it's to be, right? But that doesn't always feel good, of course. And so there's still parts of me that are like, oh, but I would have preferred this and preferred that. So that still comes up. But I see that for what that is, which is criticism of God. Basically, to me, that's how I see it. When I'm in entertaining ideas that what is now is not proper, not right somehow, I'm criticizing my creator. I'm criticizing myself. I'm criticizing the universe, criticizing source spirit. I'm criticizing everything. So I don't tend to do that. I don't empower or engage those thoughts. So I still have the thoughts of, I miss Tassel, I miss my kids, I miss, and I did engage these, but I realized what I was doing, and I sort of stopped, and I let those feelings go through me and begin to dissipate. And so now it's more like when I'm with you or talking with you or with my children or any relationship that I hold dear to me, um, then I trust that that is the moment that I'm to have that with them. And if it's not there, and in the next moment, then I trust that that also is proper. And so the non-attachment is not, it's not that we're like separate from the people or separate from the relationships. We're just not attached to how they arrive within us, and we just follow our desires, our whims and stuff. Part of my struggle is that some of my I get a little too analytical with my own nudges. So like I might feel like I want to call you, and then I'm like, oh well, what is that? Is that my ego, or what is this? And I get a little too analytical, and I may not end up calling or something. So it all depends what part we're at. But there's a difference between like non-attachment and detachment, right? Like, so detachment, but non-attachment looks like detachment to the observer. So like when Tassel will look at me, she might be like, he doesn't miss me the way I miss him. But that's not true. That's not true. It's just that I don't go that way with it. So I have the missing feelings arise, or the sadness of whatever it is, and I have that stuff arise, but I'm not going to build on that or express that or really get into that. Like, I let that run through me as quickly as it can. I don't try to rush it, but as quickly as I can let that move through me, because my objective is to be in acceptance of the moment. And so we're not looking to detach from people and like not care. It's not like that. It's not like I don't care. It's more like I care about my presence is my sort of, guiding principle, is like maintaining the presence, which maintains that joy. Because the only time we're out of that is when we're in the future or the past going, oh, blah, 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 blah. Imagining nonsense, basically, is what takes us out of bliss. Imagining nonsense. And so I'm like, oh, here's sadness coming up, and I get better and better, and I don't always do this perfectly, so I'm not trying to claim like flawless application of these principles, but this is what I try to teach and what I try to be. And it can appear as probably indifferent, sort of like, so I may not seem excited to talk to someone. Like, so if we get on or get on Zoom and like I don't seem excited, the elation of like the reality being better than it was a moment ago falls away from this as well. So like it gets a little harder to be like super excited about this moment, because then I'm sort of saying this moment was better than the last moment, right? And so that activity starts to die down, and then the moments are all sort of seen with that joy. And so it's, I would say, not detachment, not pulling away from people or anything, but just non-attachment of like respecting that they are who they are, and I'm grateful for the time I spend with them. And I'm grateful for our experiences together. And it's sort of like a mini how would I say this? Like, every time we stop talking, you may never talk to me again, right? Like in reality, I could walk outside and get hit by a bus right after this stream, and you may never see me again. So every moment you're with another could be the last moment. You're perpetually letting go of the expectation that you'll have another moment with them, and because that expectation is what causes us to sort of go astray from the presence. And it's that to doing it to that degree is not for everyone. It's, uh but it can appear like non-attachment, or it can appear like a bad thing, sort of. But when you move into that, like, it starts to become kind of clear that that's the way to do it. At least for me, that was my experience of it. And so it's not that those feelings don't come up, like the feelings of missing or the feelings of whatever, or like, but when those feelings come up, those are that's lack fear-based feeling. Like, it's not real. So it's based on something that's not true, is what I'm trying to say by it's not real. The feeling's real. But the feeling doesn't mean love the way, it doesn't mean unconditional love. It's the opposite. It's the opposite. Unconditional love is loving you regardless. If you don't even want to be with me and you leave and run away and you go have another boyfriend, and I love you anyway. That's unconditional love. Unconditional love means I love you regardless of where you are, or if you're talking to me or not talking to me, or whatever's going on. But the ego tells us that love is, if I miss him, then that's how much I love him, or if I miss her, that's how much I love her. To a degree, that is true. It is love. Like, everything is love, but the ego's using the love to manipulate into fear, basically. And we don't have to do that. We can just have the love, and then it could just be okay. That's what I try to advocate for. It's okay. It's okay.
So,
Yeah.
so you brought up non-attachment, detachment, unconditional love, and I just want to speak to each one of those just from my own soul's experience and understanding. So yeah, detachment to me is like withdrawal. It's like shutting down the heart, usually from fear.
Yeah.
And I would say, like, I'm really good at not detaching. It's like almost like a superpower of mine, I would say. Like, people can sometimes like detach so much from me, and I am still not gonna detach. I'm still like, I'm still here. I love you. I'm still here. So yeah, we're not talking about detachment. And then non-attachment, I think you said this, to me means that I'm okay with whatever is currently happening. And I accept that this is what's highest and best. Yes, I get that. And then unconditional love, 100%. To me, I unconditionally love everyone, no matter if they're talking to me or not. Like, no matter what happens between you and I will always unconditionally love you, and I will always be there for you if you want me to. So I'm with you on all of those things. And then the part that maybe I'm still working out is, do you still try to get things? Like,
No.
like the way we're talking, like, why would we even bother to talk to each other, I guess, or like see each other in person, or like, do you still
No.
try? Do you still follow your heart's pull? Like, to me, you do. Like, to me, you can have all of this, and you can follow your heart's pull about, oh, I would like to see you in person. Not that I can't be okay if we don't, but I would like that. That would be a joyful experience. So to me, it's just balancing all of that, to me personally. Certainly acceptance, but also, to me, honoring the heart's desires as well, that is part of the experience of being in a human body, is to have a heart. So to me, like, you described it as like a clash, that we're clashing.
I didn't mean we are clashing. I meant the worldviews or the perspectives are clashing, not you and me.
Oh, okay. I don't know. You use the word clash, and I think I just think you and I are a bit at different ends of the spectrum of like following the heart's desire versus non-attachment. You're very over here in non-attachment, and I'm a little bit more into following the heart's desires while carrying non-attachment too. And I think that's the interesting part of our relationship for me.
Yeah. Yeah. So you said a lot of good things. I just wanted to take a minute to talk about like, do we do things, right? Doing things. This is a really deep thing, but no, we're not doing anything. The doing, seems like we're doing stuff. I concede. Ostensibly, reality seems like we do things, but ostensibly means it looks to be, we're not. So we're watching a form. We're watching a form do as it does. The desires that the form has, like, may cause the form to go do stuff. What's happening, the difference is that the doubt of, oh, should I do this or that, and the planning and that, all that stuff, that falls away. The form just is moving and does whatever. The form calls tassel, or the form writes a book, or the form whatever. All of that is divinity doing. So the form's not actually doing anything. So when we have our desires, yeah, like if they're expansive, loving desires, and we just follow those, there's nothing wrong with any of that. There's nothing wrong with any of it, but when we have a desire, like, but it's coming from fear, that is where we want to investigate deeper, in my experience. Like, so for example, I miss Tassel, so I'm gonna call her, almost certainly, if I deeply miss Tassel and I call her, she's not gonna pick up. Almost certainly. Because I've committed to see the truth. So my soul will show me that I'm being unhealthily attached right now. So I'll try to call her, she won't answer, I'll get more upset, until eventually I realize, oh, I get it. The next time I want to call her, maybe I call her because I just want to talk to her. I just, not because I feel like I miss her so much, or not because I feel lackful without talking to her, but because I would like to talk to her. I just feel called to just call her, sort of thing, right? And so because it gets very complicated with two people, so when two people are doing this and are mirroring each other energetically, if Tassel really wants me to call her, I probably won't. And I won't even be conscious of that. Because at this expression, in this density or physical density, we are mirroring all the time, and we're not always consciously aware of what we're mirroring. So if Tassel really, really wants me to call, or really, really wants me to do something, I'm probably not going to do it. And it's not even me, or it's not so much a decision to not do it. It's just that we've been asking Spirit for purification of attachment, purification of wounds, and for healing. And these situations will arise in order for us to see where we have attachments that are like causing us suffering, basically. And so it's not that we don't do anything. It's sort of like realizing, or it's not that we don't act. Like we act, I guess. It all depends on the level of reality you're looking at. But there is no actual doer of things. The creation and creator are one in this moment only. So the creator and creation are happening simultaneously and you're just a sort of a result sort of that. Not even a result. You're an expression or an emergence of that. And so we're not actually even really deciding anything. What we're learning to do is stop the ego's doubt, like, and the fear. We're just learning how to like let go of all of that nonsense. And when we do that, then we just act and just do. But because two people doing that together, the interactions get complicated, because now we have two forms of source or divinity expressing to each other to help show each other the things they need to look at, right? Like, and it doesn't mean there's not beautiful things too. There's great things also. So it tends, like, I think we've noticed in our relationship, it tends to go like this, right? Like, we have periods of really close, connected, good times and whatever, and then we also have periods of conflict or like stuff clashing or whatever. And like I said, it isn't us clashing ever. It's the experiences and the wounds clashing or perspectives clashing, not us. We aren't able to actually fight each other. This is all pretend. So not pretend, but it's all a show, sort of. And both of us will like get called into these like expressions of our fear, and then the other might mirror the fear, and you know, it turns into this whole thing. But essentially, like, because we've both committed to spirit that we are wanting to see the truth of ourselves, and we talk about it and we're teaching it and we're trying to be pure in that way, we're not necessarily like I'm probably not often gonna go the way you try to get me to go. I'll probably never go the way you try to get me to go. But if you want me to go away and don't try to get me to go the way, I'll probably go the way, if that makes sense. And the same for you, like for me. Basically, both of us are learning of sovereignty. We're learning of acceptance. We're learning of non-attachment. We're learning how to be at peace with ourselves, but together. And so this can be really challenging because we both have different lessons we're learning, different things going on, different experiences that were traumatic for us growing up. But eventually we step outside of that and realize that all of that was not really real so much, the way we saw it. And then we begin to see that all of it was just love. And I think I mentioned today, like, we had some conflict over the last little while. And I said that today, like, I was trying to, because you had said a bunch of different things to me about your experience and some of the things you were feeling, and being transparent and things like that. And I was having real trouble even remembering that there was a problem before. Like, that there was something happened. Like, I had forgiven, to me, it was like ancient, buried history, sort of. And that's, I think, what happens. That's, you know, like, we played out that story together to learn whatever we learned, and I took a lot out of it. I got a lot out of that whole thing. And then I sort of, that's how I think we can tell if we've forgiven. We almost are like forgetting, like, we don't really even remember being upset, really. Like, we don't remember it the same way at all. The whole experience is uplifted into something else, and it's not, you know, there's nothing to apologize about or to, you know, anything like that. But yeah, I think it's we're trying to remove the doubt. Yeah, exactly. You can clearly feel, Garganzula said, you can clearly feel when you went somewhere that source does not follow. You feel it. You fall out of alignment, like you feel it. And it doesn't, like he said, it doesn't mean you're never supposed to go to those places. right? We have to accept that we're learning. Like, part of the reason we're going to these places of like upset, pain, fear, whatever, is to learn. So whenever any of us are doing it, and this is actually probably one of my biggest learnings, and one of the hardest things for me, is when Tassel is upset about something that I don't understand, right? Or that I'm not able to relate to in my experience very well. That's probably the hardest thing, because my question is obviously immediately, why is she doing this? Right? Why is she in this thing? And that's a kind of a judgmental way for me to see that. Like, so yeah, it's in my experience, I would say it's not that we don't ever like follow our doubts and fears and stuff, but once we've followed doubt and fear enough, eventually we go, this is not right. Like, this feels bad. I've learned enough, and I'm not doing it anymore. And then let the reality fall as it may, sort of thing, right? So you still act. I still do stuff. I still go do whatever. I have my kids every weekend, and I parent them, and I'm very here. But I don't see myself as the human the way others do anymore. And that's, it's getting to a place where it's comfortable for me. It's comfortable, but it's challenging for a lot of different reasons. And I think we're experiencing some of that challenge too with our long distance, right? Like with because we tend to have really good times together as well when we're in person. It tends to be really harmonious and really expansive usually, and we have a lot of fun and stuff like that. So but it's sort of like it's sort of like we're both doing things that are probably the hardest for the other to deal with. So like, for example, if you like really want me to come, and like are like saying, I really miss you, I'd really like you to come, and all those things, and then I say like, oh, I don't think I can come right now, or something like that, that's really hard. And for me, it's really hard for me to like who's sort of, it seems like they're saying that things aren't okay unless I'm doing what they're asking me to do. Um, so it's kind of these little scenarios that, and I have a few of them still. So acceptance or judgment, like when I observe judgment, I have trouble with that still. These types of things. But yeah, so I had so there's a lot about it, but it's not, it doesn't, it may sound like may sound cold or something, but it's not like that. It's really not like that. It's a deep, loving honoring of the other person and their sovereignty, and just respecting that wherever I am now, or wherever they are, or whatever's happening, it's perfect now. The feelings of missing still come up and everything like that. So you still do stuff. You're still doing stuff, I guess. Not really, but
The biggest thing for me that I try to live in is, am I doing something from inspiration, or am I doing something from fear? So
yeah.
that's how I sort of calibrate what I'm doing. Does this really feel aligned? Does this feel expansive? or is it something that, oh, maybe I'm just doing it because I'm scared? So that's how I keep trying to move, is just from inspiration and not from fear.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's the best way to do it. Eventually there's no decision anymore. There's no more thinking about it. Um, it's just obvious what I'm doing. You know what I mean? So yeah, there becomes no question anymore because you don't even look at the fear option. The fear option, you essentially are at a high vibration. The fear option doesn't really approach your awareness, really. So um, it just doesn't seem, it doesn't even pop into your mind, really, at a certain point. Um, but yeah, that's a really good way. Like while we're bridging it, while we're still sort of in a place of in the linear thinking mind and thinking like sort of along the lines of what am I going to do about this situation, or what am I going to choose here, what I'm going to choose there. That would be the best way to try to align inspiration or fear. Yeah, I would say. Um, and even when you choose out of fear, you were always probably going to do that. Um, the fear was overcharged over the positive, expansive option. And so the fear was almost certainly going to be followed. That pathway of activity was almost certainly going to be followed because we're much like hardware or robots that are, and our consciousness or what our experiences program our software. And so it's sort of like, if you have 51% charge to the fear and 49% charge to the positive expression, you were always going to do the fearful thing. You think you made a decision and stuff, but you didn't. You just let the overcharged fear take control, which it will do. There's not much question to why someone behaves in fear. That's always what's happened, is that the fear has overpowered the positivity. And so we realize eventually that we're not making any decision at all, really. We're just following what charged path seems most appropriate, and that's what leads us to our learning. So we'll go down the fear path and we'll eventually go, oh, that path sucks. That path sucks. I'm not doing that path anymore. And it's not a choice, because the path just sucks, so we don't even go that way. Basically, we just go the other way. There's lots of learning there's lots of stuff, interesting sights. It's kind of like if you go to the zoo, maybe there's a certain area of the zoo that you don't like as much. There's lots of cool animals there to look at and interesting things to learn, but you really want to just go look at the lions or something, right? So you go to the lions. So it depends. And like Garganzula said, there's no problem with going the fear route or going to other places. We have to forgive ourselves of that, not like beat ourselves up. It's our ego that also says, no, don't do this, don't do that, or gets mad at us if we kind of do the wrong thing. As we start to develop that spiritual ego and go, oh, I know that I want to follow expansion instead of constriction, but then I don't follow it and I follow constriction. Then we're like, oh, I know better. Oh. No, but we don't know better. That's the problem. We don't. So we have to let ourselves off the hook while also staying responsible somehow. It's all constantly all these paradoxes of choosing and not actually choosing, and it's really wacky. But yeah, I think that for most people, that's the goal, is what you said, expansive. Am I inspired and expansive to do this thing, or am I constricted and scared of something, and is that why I'm acting? But I think really looking at that is the most effective thing that we can do while we're here, basically. Yeah. Was there anything else that you wanted to add?
I think that's it for me.
Excellent. Okay, thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time. Appreciate you coming to hang out with us. We love your beautiful faces, and we'll see you on Wednesday. Uh, and yeah, take care.
Yep. So much love to everybody, and especially in in remembering back into your amazing bliss state. So
Take
much
care.
love to everyone.
Bye.
Bye.